Hey, what's up guys? In this video, I'm going to show you how to factor difference of squares. So let's understand what that is first of all. When you have a binomial is two terms. So we have a 9x squared in this example minus 49. So we have one term, 9x squared, and the second term is the minus 49. So it is a binomial. Those coefficients, the numbers for this binomial, they can be perfect square numbers. Now, perfect square numbers are numbers that have a perfect square root. So if you notice the 9, we know what is the square root of 9. The square root of 9 is 3. And we know what is the square root of 49. The square root of 49 is 7. So every time we know the square root of a number and the square root is not a decimal, then it is a perfect square number. So I'll give you guys some examples of other perfect square numbers. So 25 is a perfect square number. The square root of 25 is 5. 36 is a perfect square number. The square root of 36 is 6. 81 is a perfect square number. 100 is a perfect square number. So all those numbers they do have a square root that is not a decimal, and we can actually find out what is the perfect square number. Sometimes we have to use a calculator, but most of the times we know what it is. So if we know that the numbers are perfect square numbers, so 9 and 49 are perfect square numbers, we can factor by using the square roots. So the way you guys are going to factor, we set up two binomials multiplying each other. So I have two parentheses. I am going to take the square root of 9, and that's going to be 3. So, and that's at the beginning of the binomial. So I'm going to write the square root of 9 at the beginning of the parentheses. So here's the 3, and in the second parenthesis, there is the 3. So the square root of 9 is 3. The x squared, you're going to split it up. So we need two x's. X times x will give you x squared. So we have x here and x over here. And I'm saying multiplying, you multiply x times x because the idea of factoring is if you multiply these two binomials, you have to get this back. So if you multiply the 9x times the 9x, that's going to give you, 3x. I said 9. 3x times 3x, that's going to give you guys the 9x squared. And that's what's factoring. Factoring, you are undoing the multiplication. And you can check when you multiply that you get the same binomial back. Now for the next number, we do have a minus 49. Now let's focus on the sign first. This is a difference of squares, and the word difference means minus, so you do have a minus in between, and that's one of the things you need for the difference of squares. Difference, you need a minus. Now when you multiply these two binomials, in order to get a negative, a minus, you're going to have to multiply a positive number and a negative number. So I'm going to use a minus and a plus for my two binomials. Different signs because, again, if you multiply the negative times the positive, that's going to give you guys a negative. And we're going to take the square root of 49, which is 7 and 7. We know the square root of 49 is 7. So those are perfect square numbers. And if you multiply, you can check negative 7 times the positive 49. That's going to give me a negative 49 or a minus 49. Now you might be thinking, if you remember multiplying binomials, well, we usually get something in the middle, a middle term. Well, eventually those are going to factor, not factor, they're going to cancel. And I'm going to show you guys that. But the answer when you guys are factoring for this difference of squares are these two factors. So the answer is this, 3x minus 7 times 3x plus 7. Those are the factors. They're almost the same binomials, but they do have different signs. So they're not the same, but they're similar. So let me show you guys what happens when you multiply here. So I'm going to multiply 3x times 3x. That's going to be a 9x squared. And then you multiply 3x times the next term, 7. That's going to be a positive 21x. And then you guys go to the next term in the first parentheses, negative 7 times 3x. That is a minus 21x. And the negative 7 times the positive 7, that is a negative 49. When you guys look at the middle terms, positive 21x minus 21x cancels. So all we have left are the 9x squared and the minus 49. And that's what we have. We have that binomial difference of squares, and we got the factors. So one more time, my two factors, my answer, when you guys factor, are those two parentheses. I'm going to show you guys another one because sometimes it's a little bit tricky when you guys are looking at the difference of squares. You can have a greatest common factor, GCF, and you guys can factor out that number or that term or GCF. You can factor out the greatest common factor. So I'm looking at this binomial and it is a difference. There's a minus in between. And I noticed 36k to the fourth power minus 16k squared. Well, first of all, they do have a k in common. So I can factor out a k, and we always factor out the one with the lowest exponent. So I'm going to take out the k squared. I'm going to factor that out. So I'm going to use a parenthesis here, and I'm going to start putting or writing the k squared outside because I took that one out. Now, if you guys pay attention to the numbers, 36 and the 16, they are perfect square numbers. We know the square root of 36 is 6 and the square root of 16 is 4. But if you think about it, if you guys actually think about the greatest common factor, they do have a greatest common factor. 4 goes into 36 and 4 goes into 16. So if you guys can factor out, you guys need to factor out the GCF, greatest common factor. If you guys thinking about 2, well, 2 goes into 36, 2 goes into 16, but that's not the greatest common factor. 4 is greater than 2. So I'm going to factor out the 4. When I factor out the 4, I'm going to start dividing the binomial by the GCF, greatest common factor. So 36 divided by 4, that's going to be a 9. And the k to the fourth power, we took out k squared. So that means that you guys took out 2 k's. So here, we're going to have only k squared left. So 9 k squared minus, and you guys divide 16 by 4. That's going to be 4. And we took out the k squared, so we don't have a k next to this 4. So it's just a minus 4. One more time, look at the binomial. In the binomial, well, we have a minus. That's a difference. And 9 is a perfect square number, and 4 is a perfect square number. So I can actually factor that out. So, or I can use the difference of squares, the square root, to factor that binomial. So I am going to use my two parentheses like this. I'm going to bring down my GCF. You always need that outside of the parentheses. So there's the 4k squared, and let's use the square roots. So square root of 9, that's going to be 3. You guys keep the k, 3, keep the k. We need different signs. Remember that we have a difference. So in order to get that minus back, we need to multiply a negative times a positive. And the square root of 4 is 2. So we put a 2 here and a 2 over here. So my factors, when you guys factor that difference of squares, we have all of this here. 4k squared times the quantity of 3k minus 2 times 3k plus 2. Alright guys, so that is the conclusion of my video. You guys can click that like button if you guys like my videos. You can also subscribe to my channel. Make sure you guys practice, and I'll see you guys later.